Good morning and welcome to this wonderful day that we are starting on the first episode of the Hydrogen Economy Indaba. And we would want to heartily thank the sponsors and the organizers and the broadcast team. This promises to be one of those exciting days when we are looking into defining the opportunity of the hydrogen economy. And as a manner of kicking the proceedings, I'm going to share a presentation quickly. As you can see, our presentation is Hydrogen Economy Indaba, Episode 1. And for the rules of engagement, all speakers are requested to keep to the time allocated. Audience questions will be covered during the allocated time for the session. Further questions can be put in the chat to be submitted to speakers for answers. Let us focus on the outputs intended for our session today. And we have a stellar lineup of presenters.
Dr. Makhura, sorry, can I ask you to just put your presentation into full presentation mode, please?
It is.
If you can just push F5, it's not in full presentation mode, sir.
F5.
Okay, no, all right, please proceed. We'll just run it like that. That's fine. But you need to switch onto the next slide as well.
All right, thank you. As a way of starting, I want to share this quotation that says, in the future, we will not be able to compete on the world stage with the low labor cost or by exploiting vast reserves of mineral resources. We will have to compete with our brains and with our science. This is a quotation from Sir Paul Ness during the occasion of that lecture. And to acknowledge the efforts that have gone on into the country with regards to the hydrogen economy, I start by acknowledging what the Department of Science and Technology has done with regards to the creation of Hydrogen South Africa, and then it being hosted under the three arms of infrastructure catalysis and systems, and also having an arm of public awareness so that we know about the safety. So I guess here the important message is that the biggest challenge with hydrogen is storage, because hydrogen is the lightest element with the lowest density. But the opportunities here that we see is that in Africa, we don't have a single hydrogen refueling station. And we can see that other nations are advancing and progressing. So what options do we have in terms of refueling? We do have that storage, which is stationary. We have a station module, hydrogen fueling station. And what is important is those pressure of megapascals. And I normally say that is similar to gasoline, whether it's a 93 or a 95 leaded or unleaded. So going towards the end, we see that hydrogen as a fuel, you can have physical storage, but important here is that applications include stationary power, portable power, and transportation. And how does it look like? You do have a hydrogen fueling pump on the left, and those are cars that are powered by hydrogen, and you also see a golf cart powered by hydrogen. So what do we say? The future is here. You can see a hydrogen bus in the UK on the left, in the middle, another hydrogen bus in California, a hydrogen bus in Norway, a hydrogen train in Germany, and then on the bottom photo, you do have a drone powered by hydrogen, a small plane powered by hydrogen, and a hybrid energy system of a jet airline. And so in that way, I thank you, and I'm going to be introducing our first speaker. And our first speaker for the session is Premier David Makhura, the Premier of the Gauteng province. Mr. Makhura is the Premier of the province since 21 May 2014. He's on the Provincial Executive Council General Secretary of the African National Congress in the Gauteng province. Mr. Makhura has more than 10 years experience in the role. He has been a member of the PEC since 2001 and an ex-officio member of the National Executive Committee since 2000. Mr. Makhura has been part of the delegations of the ANC and how that visited sister parties and trade unions in the African continent, China, Cuba, Latin America, and on exchanges on socio-economic development and governance matters. He is a board member of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Mr. Makhura volunteers his vast experience on governance matters and finds time to volunteer as an instructor at the Center for Education in Economics and Finance. Welcome, sir, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much to Dr. Mate, our moderator this morning. I would like to acknowledge His Excellency, the Ambassador to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Ambassador Hern Peters, Mr. Mashudu Ramano from Mitochondria, Mr. Mlaba, Dr. Thina and many distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, participating in today's Hydrogen Economy Indaba, an event of significant proportions. Yesterday, on the 6th of October 2021, the Office of the Presidency hosted the Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium of South Africa, at which one of the areas of focus was unlocking the potential of the green economy in general and the hydrogen economy to our development course and the future of energy in our country. I'm glad to join this Hydrogen Economy Indaba today to explore further opportunities and other dimensions of South Africa and Gauteng's potential in the hydrogen economy. I've been asked to focus on the hydrogen economy and local content inclusion, a topic to which I will return later in my address. Allow me first to give the context of the discussion on the hydrogen economy. First, by saying that we live in turbulent times characterized by 5 dominant megatrends. That is rapid technological change, climate change, the increasing rate of urbanization, particularly in Africa and the South, unprecedented levels of inequalities, and the perennial threat of pandemics, all of which require a profound change of both our lifestyles and our mindsets in order to guarantee a common future for humanity. This means we have to go through the kind of transformations and transitions that protect our planet and that provide a shared prosperity for humanity. The transition to a low carbon economy or a completely decarbonized economy is one of the major transformations that South Africa has to tackle in order to safeguard an inclusive and sustainable future for all her people and to contribute to the global effort of shifting from a civilization that is based on greed and the destruction of the environment to a new civilization to which I will return. In other words, we must seek to reimagine a human civilization that is based on fundamental principles of environmental sustainability, shared prosperity, and a peaceful coexistence. For if we don't, we shall all perish as fools. South Africa is therefore a proud signatory to the Paris Agreement the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in pursuit and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in pursuit of the kind of global transformation and transition from the current inequitable, unsustainable, and unjust socio-economic model and energy systems that exacerbate climate change as well as inequalities and trigger many pandemics of which the scientists are warning. All these threaten the existence of humanity and threaten to undermine and erode all human progress and the peaceful coexistence of nations. From where it is, South Africa has to transition from the current fossil fuel-dominated economic and energy system, where close to 90% of electricity is generated from coal, to a renewable and more sustainable energy system that powers an equally important inclusive economy and shared prosperity. You will hear that I talk of both an energy system and an economic system because both are integrally linked. And our transformation and transition must address both the kind of economy we have and the new energy system we seek to build. And an inclusive and sustainable economy we also seek to create in our lifetime. In South Africa's case, the just energy transition must be undertaken simultaneously with a sorely needed structural transformation that seeks to tackle both the economic inequalities and address the injustices of the past, including unequal access to safe and clean energy. From a policy perspective, South Africa's National Development Plan sets a goal that by 2030, South Africa's transition to an environmentally sustainable, climate resilient, low carbon economy and just society will be well underway. In addition to clean and renewable energy, the National Development Plan further articulates the importance of energy security for South Africa by stating, and I quote, South Africa should invest in and help exploit the wide range of opportunities for the low carbon energy from hydroelectric and other clean energy sources in Southern Africa. The National Development Plan also acknowledges that South Africa has rich endowments in natural resources that can enable it to fund the transition to a low carbon future and a more diverse and inclusive economy. Both our own national development plans, timelines, and the UN SDGs, as well as successive global conferences on climate change, place enormous obligations on government and society in our country, not only to begin towards definite targets for reducing carbon emissions, but to demonstrate that the transition has to start now. And we in the Gauteng city region have launched our provincial plan, which we call Growing Gauteng Together 2030. And our provincial plan seeks to secure the quality of life for our residents and advance a model of sustainable industrial development, which is premised on clean energy and an inclusive economy. And this, we must make progress in this decade. Our primary objective is to build a Gauteng which is seamlessly integrated, economically inclusive, environmentally sustainable, and socially cohesive in the context of being a globally competitive city region whose economy is based on sustainable, innovation-driven, smart, and knowledge-based industries. It is for this reason that we see the Gauteng city region as a hub for both the fourth industrial revolution, but also for the shift towards green industrialization. And this, we see our province as playing a critical role in the development and deployment of green hydrogen to large-scale industrial transport and residential developments within our new smart cities, such as Lanseria Smart City and the Vaal River Smart City, as well as providing clean energy sources to the development of our special economic zones, one of which is already in operation, the Tshwane Automotive Special Economic Zone, which will be followed by the Vaal River Special Economic Zone and the West Rand Agro-Processing Zone. We have earmarked these developments of special economic zones as critical areas where the deployment of green hydrogen will be experimented with. In particular, the Vaal River Special Economic Zone and the Vaal River Smart City is the southern corridor of our province. It's a hub where we would like the development of green hydrogen to be based, and critical innovations on green hydrogen to be developed there in partnership with both Sasol and the Vaal University of Technology, as well as other critical private sector players such as Mitochondria, which is participating in today's Green Economy Indaba. We have identified critical success factors for us to kickstart this important development of this green hydrogen hub. We have, to this effect, we have signed a memorandum of understanding with Sasol, which was announced yesterday, and we are working with several mining companies and major private sector companies as well, such as Mitochondria, so that we can build real momentum to attract investors into the Vaal Special Economic Zone and the Smart City, and to ensure that the hydrogen economy is going to be the critical pillar of this hub and SEZ of our province. There are also several initiatives in other parts of our province, such as the West Rand, where the mining houses have already been working together with the Gauteng provincial government and the district municipality, as well as the Development Bank of Southern Africa, on unlocking renewable energy, including the production of hydrogen for purposes of supplying energy to the mines in the West Rand. We fully support the need to aggregate all these initiatives in our province, particularly aggregate them around the Vaal Special Economic Zone and the West Rand, working in partnership with the private sector. I am also fully aware and support the initiative by the Northern Cape Provincial Government, which is positioning itself as the strategic location for the production and export of green hydrogen through the Namakwa SEZ in Boegoebaai. Our counterparts in the Northern Cape have made a strong case that they are already a destination of major renewable energy investments, particularly in the area of solar, and that they are best placed as a coastline to be the place where the exports, hydrogen exports will take place. For the record, we are not competing with the Northern Cape. Gauteng's position is unique as an economic and industrial hub. We already have massive intellectual and industrial capacity to develop, to produce and deploy green hydrogen domestically in our industries, in our transport systems, and in our smart city developments. We have preeminent universities and world-class research institutions that are already involved in cutting-edge renewable energy research and development, one of which is our state CSIR, which is also involved in today's Hydrogen Economy Indaba. That's the key advantage we enjoy. We also have in our plans and are in the process of doing all this, the development of a network of special economic zones and smart cities, that these are smart cities of the future, whose energy source and economies will have to be green and smart. And for this reason, green hydrogen is critical to unleashing the full potential of these new smart cities, as well as the special economic zones that we are building in our province. This is a very important part of our green industrialization agenda. The story of our vision and commitment to green economy and the pathway to a new green and clean industrialization in the Gauteng city region is critical if our province is to retain and enhance its position as a leading industrial and economic hub in Africa. The hydrogen economy development is an important aspect of our vision and our ambition. Linked to the green agenda, we have also adopted the Transformation, Modernization and Reindustrialization Program to reposition the economy of Gauteng into a new economy. As we call for and undertake this journey of the just transition, particularly the just energy transition, we also want to ensure that there's significant local content and a deliberate involvement of Black businesses and women-owned companies in the hydrogen economy, in pursuit of the principle and goal of an inclusive and sustainable economy. Black people and women cannot be left out of these new efforts towards green industrialization, nor can they be left out of the fourth industrial revolution. We must harness our rich natural resources and the diversity of our people to ensure that we rebuild our economy from the ruins of COVID-19 and create new industries and new entrants who will go on to become major industrialists in a low carbon future or in a completely decarbonated future. The Gauteng provincial government is determined to work with research institutions and the private sector in vigorously promoting innovation within our provincial economy and in fast-tracking the development of new industries which are innovation-driven, knowledge-based, smart, and green. Through our special economic zones and smart cities and the new economic zones in different parts of our province, we are redrawing the economic geography of Gauteng and changing the political economy of our province to create a more balanced, regionally spread sets of industries, to build a more inclusive and more sustainable economy, which is also based on a sustainable and clean energy mix, in order to deal with what has always been a looming energy supply challenges in our province for almost a decade. The Gauteng provincial government has developed an integrated energy strategy. That strategy has been revised into the Gauteng Energy Security Strategy, which was adopted in 2016. The key pillars of that strategy is, firstly, the provision of policy guidance by government and the partnership between government and the private sector in the development of an energy mix that is clean, sustainable, and more secure. Secondly, our strategy focuses on knowledge development, information dissemination, and capacity building through a partnership between the universities, research institutions, government, and the private sector. Thirdly, the market stimulation and aggressive investment promotion in the green energy in the green economy and the renewable energy sector. We are one of those provinces that have not done as much as we are supposed to do. All the green energy investments are going elsewhere in the Republic. And I want to emphasize, we say so not so much to compete for this highly needed investments for provinces, especially those that are underdeveloped and much more rural, like the Northern Cape. We say this not to compete with them, but we say this to underscore the point that as the industrial hub, we've got to take steps ourselves to ensure we demonstrate that this industrial hub is shifting towards a green economy, and that we are taking everything to secure our our position as the industrial hub by also investing and significantly rolling out clean energy, particularly hydrogen economy initiatives in this hub of the economy of our country. So through the Gauteng Energy Security Strategy, we hope to work with you in the private sector to achieve several objectives, one of which is moving our province to a low carbon economy, ensuring that the Gauteng's carbon emissions peak and they start declining as we approach 2030, ensuring that there is an improvement in energy efficiency and the use of energy across all industries and all sectors, ensuring the upscaling of renewable energy portions of our energy mix, and ensuring access to clean, affordable, reliable energy supply to all residents and businesses. And of late, this has been a big problem for both businesses and residents of our province. The supply of energy has not been reliable. And ensuring that we develop a capacity for production, storage, application, and deployment of green hydrogen and other renewable energy sources in industrial use, in residential uses, in smart mobility, and in the development of our major economic nodes and new cities. We know for a fact that South Africa has an abundance of the sun, the wind, and the platinum group of metals. We have world-class universities and research institutions, and we have astute and resilient entrepreneurs and businesses, all of whom must work together with our government to unlock the full potential of the green economy. And again, by emphasizing again, by taking concrete initiatives that could demonstrate that we can produce, we can store, and we can deploy for domestic use green hydrogen. And we can also produce large scale for export purposes. We know South Africa is endowed with 85% of the world's platinum group metals. And our country is considered the richest in regard to this type of metals so crucial to the development of renewable energy. We are already in the game as South Africa because we have, since 2008, set up the Hydrogen South Africa, which was officially launched by the Department of Science and Innovation. The vision of Hydrogen South Africa was to use local resources and existing knowledge to create additional capacity and enable the development of high-value commercial activities in hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. Hydrogen South Africa is already making steady progress in different areas. For instance, although the fuel cell technology is a nascent industry in South Africa, most of its progress can be attributed to the work of Hydrogen South Africa, the development of the National Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technologies Research, Development and Innovation Strategy, which is being implemented by various research institutions and inspiring private sector initiatives and investments. The main objective of Hydrogen South Africa initiative is to develop and guide innovation along the value chain of hydrogen and fuel cell technologies in South Africa. This is in line with the provincial mineral beneficiation strategy of our province. Mineral beneficiation is one of the critical areas of investments we are focusing on with our industrial development zone based at the OR Tambo International Airport. The application of fuel cell technology is in stationary energy generation, transportation energy, and portable power generation. All of these initiatives ought to be pursued, and we ought to pursue them pretty urgently. The Development Bank of Southern Africa and the IDC have committed projects funding to create fuel cell technology businesses. We continue to think of ways and means as a provincial government on how we can unlock the full potential of the hydrogen economy. In this regard, as the Gauteng provincial government, we have held a series of engagements with private sector players, some of whom are here, on the Gauteng green hydrogen pathfinding strategy, which has got a number of key areas, which I want to share with this seminar. Firstly, is about the deployment of large-scale embedded generation for the dedicated industrial installations or areas in need of reliable microgrids to stabilize local base loads, which are not stable at the moment. The strategy identifies Ekurhuleni and Mfuleni as focus areas, including the proposed Vaal River Special Economic Zone. Phasing in green hydrogen into public transport systems is also something we are looking at with a great deal of urgency on our Gautrain systems and the bus rapid transit systems of our 3 metros. Green aviation fuel in partnership with both AXA and OR Tambo International Airport is a critical area of opportunity for the aviation sector, and the dedicated Hydrogen Skills Academy. And this is a matter we have been discussing also with both Sasol and Mitochondria around the need to develop a skill set that will be deployed to the hydrogen economy. Embedding of strategic localization and new enterprises and supplier development initiatives. Because indeed, without new entrants, without opening opportunities for small businesses, for new players in this space, particularly for businesses owned by Black people and women, without opening opportunities for them, we will not be doing justice. The just transition would not be so just with regard to this area. The green hydrogen economy presents an enormous opportunity for municipalities across the country, and especially in our province, to partner with private developers on new industrialization initiatives, especially with regard to the green economy, including hydrogen production and for domestic and export markets. We envisage stakeholder mobilization, and this gathering, this Indaba, is an important platform for me to mobilize those of you who are here. If you are not already mobilized, the fact that you have called this Indaba means you are already mobilized, but we need to mobilize more partnerships and more investment to create an ecosystem where investment decisions could be made to unlock the full benefits and full potential of the hydrogen economy and fuel cell technologies across the different sectors of our economy. Because this will help us address unemployment, a serious problem in our country, reducing poverty and addressing inequalities. Partnership between government and the private sector hold the greatest prospects for the unlocking of the hydrogen economy. Of course, we also would like to partner with countries that have already advanced systems, and I'm glad that the Netherlands is here. We would like to partner with those countries that have already advanced systems. But we would also like to partner with countries that can provide us with opportunities for export of hydrogen energy. For instance, we've got a number of other initiatives related to green hydrogen. The Platinum Valley or the Hydrogen Valley is a project seeing a partnership between the public sector's Department of Science and Innovation, which is also now the Department of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, and the South African National Energy Development Institute, together with a number of private sector companies. The valley will stretch over 835 kilometers between Limpopo through Johannesburg to Durban. And several initiatives and hubs will be created for hydrogen development. Anglo-American is investing in renewable hydrogen production technology at Mogalakwena PGM's mines and in the development of hydrogen-powered fuel cells for mine haul trucks and to operate some of the equipment, mining equipment. Another private-public partnership in this area is those pursued by Sasol, Mitochondria, Toyota South Africa, to form green hydrogen partnerships and hubs. They also have broad experience in the use of and production of hydrogen and fuel cells for different applications. All these initiatives help us to achieve our goal to decarbonize our economy and have zero emission. This is a development. There's a development also with regard to a mobility corridor for mainly for freight on the N3 route between Johannesburg and Durban. For the hydrogen heavy-duty long-haul trucks, the project looks to provide hydrogen and electric vehicles with refueling and charging infrastructure. It is an opportunity to decarbonize this critical sector of our economy, and an investment in fueling infrastructure and charging infrastructure would be critical. As South Africa confronts the strategic imperative of reducing carbon emissions and shifting to clean and renewable energy, Gauteng province as an economic hub has a responsibility to lead, not just in the discourse, but also in the practical development and deployment of hydrogen to our new industrial developments, including those I have already mentioned. We firmly believe, through partnerships with the private sector and our universities and other research institutions, our provincial and national government capabilities will develop, and we will collectively unlock a high-performance hydrogen economy, which is more inclusive, which also taps on local content to enable our country to tackle the triple concerns of climate change, growing inequalities, and an exclusion of the significant number of our population from participation in the economy. We will also be addressing a critical global concern of the exclusion of developing nations and the poor in the green economy and the fourth industrial revolution. Local beneficiation of our minerals and harvesting the sun and the wind resources are the most direct pathway to the just energy transition in our country, and the direct route to unlock the full potential of the green economy so that it can create millions of jobs for our people, create new industries and new businesses as part of ensuring no one is left out or left behind. Our interest in the green economy and green hydrogen is also based on the need to preserve the position of Gauteng province as the leading economy in Africa, an economy that is sustainable and an economy that is knowledge-driven, innovation-driven, and powered by a clean and green energy mix. We know for a fact that Gauteng is among the top largest economies in Africa, But if we don't address the fundamental challenges of climate change and climate resilience, if we don't shift from the current reliance on fossil fuels to a new economy, other regions and other hubs in both our continent, our country, and the world will bypass us. So we need to focus on a new leadership role in new sectors of the economy, such as the hydrogen economy. We also, as we do so, insist on the need for an inclusive economic model that harnesses local resources, both natural resources and local talent, and ingenuity of our citizens, our local entrepreneurs, and the small businesses. I therefore conclude by inviting all of you to the Val Investment Conference, which will take place next week, Friday, on the 15th of October, and at the center of which is going to be the green hydrogen as a sector of the economy that can unleash a new type of industrialization in the regeneration and rebuilding of the Vaal River region. For that reason, I urge you and encourage you to continue to work with both the national government and us in the province in the development of what is a very promising sector of our economy. I wish the Green Economy Indaba well and great success. And again, any one of you can join us in the investment conference next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Premier. And we are inspired by the bold vision that you have shared with us. And maybe before we let you go, one of the attendees has a question. And the question is, what are the access opportunities that seem to be pre-packaged for specific beneficiaries? I think the question is also reflected on the screen. Maybe while you would be thinking about your answer, the question that I would have as a moderator, you in your speech talked about that Gauteng is not competing with other provinces. So I would like your view as to how do we ensure that there is improved collaboration across provinces for a seamless or a simultaneous growth of the country. Thank you.
Last one.
Well, I think we have had the questions, and I think one of the questions is on infrastructure development. So Premier would address the two questions first, and we'll go to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mate. I beg your permission to start with the question on collaboration with other provinces. I did say that one of the mega trends that are characterizing the turbulent world in which we live is rapid urbanization. A century or 50 years ago, urbanization was a very promising. Urbanization was about access to opportunities, and the promise of urbanization was offering people from the countryside out of an economy reliant principally on agriculture and hard labor. A life in the cities where infrastructure is concentrated, opportunities are concentrated, industries are concentrated. So the promise of urbanization in the 21st century in many parts of the world, especially in the developing world, turns into a nightmare because large sections of the population move to cities that can't cope with making provision for them. Firstly, from infrastructure, but we see a great deal of informalization. The South, the global South, is characterized by the kind of urbanization that does not necessarily lead to access to a better life. You have the growth of inadequate infrastructure. Cities can't cope with growing populations. They can't provide adequate employment. They can't provide adequate housing and all that. So if you ask me, it's in our interest as an economic hub that all the problem, we have much more balanced development as a country. So a model of development that just banks on urbanization without sustainable rural development, that model itself is not sustainable. And that is why I say that it is in our best interest and that we ensure we have a development model in our country where all the parts of the country, the regions of the country, the rural regions that have got a huge agricultural base and those that have a huge other natural resource base, these resources must be used in a sustainable way, in a climate resilient way. We must deploy technologies, but so that development happens everywhere in the country. People don't tend to go to Johannesburg. When my father came to Johannesburg more than 50 years ago, Johannesburg was the only place to go. Earlier, it was Kimberley. Kimberley was the only place to go and bypass by Johannesburg. We can't build a country where development sometimes in quotes is concentrated in one part of the country. That's why I say we're not competing. We want to collaborate and complement, but we've got distinct advantages. Each province needs to look at its distinct advantage, and we build from there, from both the natural environment and the natural resources, which must not be destroyed by mining them or using them in a way that destroys the environment. We must coexist with them and use them in a sustainable way. So this question is critical in how provinces work together and cities work together to build a better. It can't only be one part that is better. And I can tell you, Gauteng at the moment is very burdensome to govern, to lead, because everybody wants to settle and they want a piece of it.
Okay.
Personally, that's what inspires me to collaborate with my counterparts. But it's also a good development model.
All right. Thanks, Premier, for that question. And we are going to say the other answer would be deferred to after a talk by the Honorable Ambassador Hans Peters, who is going to give a talk, because following his talk, we'll have another Q&A where we will also look at how collaboration will be happening between South Africa, Netherlands, and all the others. We thank you for your wonderful, inspiring talk, and we look forward to understanding and engaging with the vision of the province. Thanks once more, and you are welcome.
Thank you.
Well, we are proceeding, and to introduce our next speaker, I'm going to give you his CV a little bit. The ambassador has represented the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the following countries. 2018 to present, he's ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in South Africa. Prior to that, 2014 to 2018, he was ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Brazil. And from 2012 to 2014, ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Afghanistan. Prior to his representation, he was the Director, Consular Affairs and Migration Policy Department, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, The Hague, from 2010 to 2012. Director, Information and Communication Department from 2006 to 2009. and Deputy Director, Information and Communication Department from 2004 to 2006. Other positions held: 2000 to 2004, Deputy Head, Political Section, Royal Netherlands Embassy, Washington, D.C. 96 to 2000, Human Resources Advisor, MFA, Personal Management Directorate, The Hague. 96 to 92, Senior Desk Officer, Economic Affairs and Trade Policy Division, MFA, UN Department, The Hague. And he started in 1985 to 1986 as a Desk Officer, EU OECD, Economic and Monetary Affairs, MFA, Economic Cooperation, The Hague. Ambassador Hans Peters, the floor is yours to share with us your thoughts. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Moderator. It's great to be here with all of you in this Green Hydrogen Indaba. I'm particularly honored to be speaking after the Honorable Premier Makhura. Very much appreciated that you give me an opportunity to talk a bit about the just energy transition. We are, of course, all aware of the enormous challenges of climate change. We felt it the last couple of months, where we saw in every part of the world extreme weather events and natural disasters. And these disasters and weather events were clearly caused by climate change that is caused by humans, by us. Children that are born today will face 7 times more heat waves compared to people born in 1960. And they will face 3 times as many floods and failed harvests. So it's really time for action. The European Union committed to having greenhouse gas emissions reduced with 55% by 2030. The Netherlands is committed to lowering emissions with 95% by 2050. China pledged to be a net zero greenhouse gas emitter by 2060. And last week, South Africa released its revised and much more ambitious national determined contribution. In South Africa, the narrative with respect to the green energy transition is quite often dominated by the impact of the exit from coal. And I think quite understandably so. 80% of South Africa's electricity is currently dependent on coal. And if South Africa stops using coal as a feedstock, 80,000 jobs only in the mining and coal sector will be at risk, and more in related industries. But the green transition also offers new opportunities to South Africa. And as the Premier just said, there are many opportunities in green hydrogen and green transition. And I think we should try to make that aspect part of the narrative as well. So not only looking at the problems related to the exit from coal, but also looking at the opportunities that are there. And green hydrogen is expected to play an important role in decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors such as steel, cement production, but also in heavy transport such as maritime, railways, aviation, and long-haul trucks where batteries are not an option. Countries all around the world are currently mapping future potential sources of green hydrogen. And South Africa always appears very high on these lists. That means that South Africa has a huge potential with its abundant wind and solar resources to become a major player in the market for green hydrogen. The Netherlands is a small country in terms of square kilometers, and we have a high population density. That means that land is scarce, and we don't have the same favorable renewable energy conditions such as South Africa. So we will probably become a green hydrogen importer. And the Netherlands needs green hydrogen also to decarbonize our own economy. We are currently, through the Port of Rotterdam, the energy hub of Northwestern Europe. 13% of the total European energy imports are going through the Port of Rotterdam. And the Port of Rotterdam is currently transforming itself from a fossil energy hub to a renewable energy hub. So our ports are looking actively to collaborate with green hydrogen projects in countries that are destined to become major producers, such as South Africa. A recent study by IHS Markit shows the potential of South Africa becoming a green hydrogen exporter. And the figures are really astonishing. A high road scenario could drive more than $100 billion investment in the renewable energy sector by 2050. And it could create up to 370,000 net additional jobs by 2050. GDP in 2050 could be 3.6% higher compared to a scenario with low green hydrogen ambitions. And we shouldn't, of course, look only at exports. Equally important is to grow domestic demand for green hydrogen. And this will especially drive skills development and development of small and medium-sized enterprises. So a couple of conclusions. Developing the manufacture and use of hydrogen using available low-carbon technologies will substantially support South Africa to progress domestic decarbonization and improve its overall economic performance. Early green hydrogen export projects can provide a sound foundation for the industry to penetrate into domestic use. The economic and employment benefits of a green hydrogen high road will be widely shared across all industrial sectors and regions and will help the just transition, just as the Premier just said. And the Netherlands is eager to engage, to collaborate, and to set up partnerships for mutual benefit around the topic of green hydrogen. And I suggest to you to explore ways to ensure that through a joint approach between our governments, our private sectors, our academia, and other stakeholders, we build a sustainable future based on green hydrogen. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ambassador. And we are encouraged by your closing comments with regards to pursuing mutual benefits that are going to have a joint approach. And I think we are now going to welcome back our Premier of Gauteng to have a question and answer session. Maybe one way of starting it as we wait for him to join us. To you, Ambassador, with regards to joint approach, what are the Netherlands or the Dutch plans in the country with regards to ensuring that we do have the requisite skills to participate in this new energy economy?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mate. I think our strength lies in logistics. As I said, thanks to our geographical position in Europe, we are the logistical distribution center for Europe. We have a lot of expertise how to organize that in a good way. And for instance, if Rotterdam is going to be a hub for renewable energy, it needs to have green hydrogen that is produced elsewhere, because clearly we can't produce it in the Netherlands. So we can assist, especially in designing supply chains, in things like port management, but also we are having a lot of expertise in Dutch universities. We're looking for cooperation with stakeholders in South Africa to jointly develop the potential of green hydrogen.
Thanks for that wonderful answer, and welcome back, Premier. And I think we started by talking about mutually beneficial approaches in terms of joint approach. And Ambassador just indicated that one of the key would be unlocking the expertise of the Dutch universities. And in your talk, you had indicated the wealth of academia and industry in Gauteng. So maybe for your initial reflection would be, what sort of partnerships can you encourage for our universities? with the Dutch universities. And then we'll go to questions that are from the audience online.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mate. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Peters. We have some of our universities and our research institutions that are already doing lots of work in this regard. I know the University of the Western Cape has also been very central to the development of fuel cell technologies, working in conjunction with Hydrogen South Africa and the CSIR. I also know that the University of Johannesburg has significant interests in terms of building a capacity. We have some of our universities that are already looking at this area. So I definitely would like a situation where we could, the Gauteng universities could partner more with universities that have already done a great deal of work. I've just mentioned the University of Johannesburg. The University of Pretoria is also has built significant capabilities, but most of that work would be we will do that work. I would like a situation, Ambassador, where we can also have a conversation with you, and we can have some very specific issues. That's in the normal course of our work. I meet with the vice chancellors of the universities in a platform focusing on innovation and training. So we will follow up on the offer that the ambassador is giving. There was a question earlier on around whether there's the pre-packaged opportunities. I would like to say in particular this investment conference we are having in the Val next week will be looking at a number of offers we are giving. This is just those sectors we would like to attract into the Val Special Economic Zone. Most of what government offers would be firstly land, making land available. Of course, sometimes we may have a land that's not suitable for a particular type of investment, but our first key leverage is on land. The second key leverage is we've got government DFIs. I made reference earlier on to the IDC, which is particularly focused on industrial development and investing in the green economy, and the DBSA, which helps to fund our bulk infrastructure. So in a sense, we kind of do more preparatory work. But once you locate in the special economic zone, what comes in there would be incentives that include tax incentives and other related incentives for export purposes. So the details of which we would discuss a great deal at the investment conference. But I would definitely say that those who are interested in this hydrogen energy initiatives, they really have an opportunity to go into a bit of a detail with us. I wouldn't mind also to leave my details with the organizers of the conference so that those who want to follow up specifically with me can do that. The organizers of the conference already have my details. That's why they got me here.
Yes. Thanks for that elaborate answer. And I think people would take you on your offer to be part of that engagement next week. There is a question from our viewers online. A proudly Sowetan SET Institute accredited with CETA. This is the question that they are asking. How do we partner to empower communities to play active part in hydrogen economy?
Well, the township, when we talk about inclusion, that the point I was making, that you can't build a new economic model that lives out significantly businesses and entrepreneurs that have historically been quarantined in some spaces. The township economy and the township businesses are a critical part of what we would like to integrate in both our special economic zones. Our innovation, we've got also innovation hubs that we have in a few townships. We've got 14 of them. We want to bring them for the 4th Industrial Revolution initiatives and the Hydrogen Economy initiatives. So all I can say about the training academy is that we also have forums with township businesses, township-based businesses. They are very organized in different places. Again, they can easily just get my details. We would like to include them in our ecosystems where we have just, the Gauteng government is just tabled the township economy bill, which is the kind of first piece of legislation in the post-apartheid South Africa to just repeal all bylaws in municipalities that often make it very difficult for small businesses and township-based businesses to set up and operate, but also to create supportive infrastructure, access to broadband, water, and electricity, to also incentivize them to locate in industrial parks where we are also offering in there some tax holidays and payment rates holidays for those that are startups. So I would like to be able to link up with them. If I can get their details, I'll link up with them and then get them to work with these forums where we aggregate and engage with the township-based businesses, whether they are in training or in services or in agro-processing or in food production or in technology. All of them need some concerted effort to bring them along. So I would like to get their details.
Thanks for that answer. And I believe there's another welcome back, Ambassador. There is another question on infrastructure. And the question on infrastructure, it has to do with, I would call it rezoning, demarcation and all, but we can see it as it's projected there. Importantly is how much land is still required for residential use, and is hydrogen fueling infrastructure considered? So that would go to a question of urban spatial planning. Maybe Ambassador can kick the question to say, in the Netherlands, how do we have hydrogen villages, or how is hydrogen integrated into communities? We'll give you first, Ambassador, and then the Premier would talk to the question as asked. Over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mate. The Netherlands at this stage is very much dependent on natural gas. But that natural gas is now coming to an end. That means we have a huge infrastructure when it comes to getting gas to industries and also to private homes. And one of the things that we're working on is to adapt that infrastructure to make sure that it can transport green hydrogen. Of course, that will need a lot of investment and also a lot of adaptation, because the pressure that you need to pump green hydrogen through your gas infrastructure is much higher than currently needed. So that's one thing. Secondly, the Port of Rotterdam, that I mentioned before, is mainly servicing the German hinterland, countries like Austria, the north of Italy. And for that, the Port of Rotterdam is itself putting a lot of investment into making sure that the green hydrogen that will arrive by ship will then be able to be transported by pipelines to Germany and to other countries. So these are two things that are that we are doing to adapt ourselves to the potential of green hydrogen.
Thanks a lot. And I think now, Premier, the opportunity is yours to answer to that question also.
Yes. So I think one of the major issues that was discussed yesterday at the sustainable infrastructure development seminar series is to get hydrogen to the level where it can be deployed for purposes we are referring to, or including exported. We're going to have to invest hugely in infrastructure. And this is new infrastructure, because our existing infrastructure was meant for a different type of economy. And part of what we are getting the investors, the type of investors we get into our investment conference in Sidibeng next week in the Val. It's also people who think, whose investment interests are in sustainability and the green economy. Obviously, one of the biggest challenges is going to be even very basic infrastructure, like charging infrastructure. So the country will have to, and in this is going to also require the private sector to be drawn into that. Laying out this infrastructure is going to be huge. The issue of land, we've got public land, publicly available land, as I say, in every area where we're attracting investment. The biggest thing we first have as government is we want to use that land to make that land available as part of our part of the bargain. What we bring on the table is land, and invite the private sector to bring other issues on the table, particularly hard capital and the skills. So zoning and rezoning is fairly straightforward. We first do the grand plan. So in fact, we do the following in Gauteng. So the vision I was outlining for you inform our zoning and rezoning activities, but we also do, at the back of it, develop an environmental assessment impact plan, a macro province-wide environmental impact assessment plan. We no longer do environmental impact assessment just only for a project, because that's what takes long. People take up to a year waiting to do an environmental impact assessment. We've got a province-wide blueprint of what we can do what in Gauteng. If we say a special economic zone in that area, we have already done at the back of it a master environmental impact assessment plan. So we know that land can be used for example, in the West Rand, we know we have 30,000 hectares of land that the mines can no longer use. They have made it available. We know we can do on that. There are certain high density development we can do, but we also know that on that we are going to be putting solar panels. So it is possible to do huge solar farm on a land that the mines say you can't build up on that land, but you can put light industries on that land. So all that we have already done to look at the environmental impact assessment. So there are no land issues. Yes, Gauteng doesn't have huge tracts of land, but for building a sustainable future and a sustainable industries, our land is enough. In some instances, we are reclaiming some of the land that would have been used for some type of old industrial development, dirty industrial development, dirty industries. We are reclaiming it to build new industries on that land.
Thanks, Premier, for the answer. There is a question that is directed to the ambassador, and I think we are going to flight it now. It's how does the ambassador see the How does the ambassador see the work of co-ops locally when Netherlands' economy is driven by co-ops? Your turn, Ambassador.
Yeah, thank you. I think look at co-ops. I translate it as partnerships. I think it's vital for the development of renewable and also green hydrogen is that we all work together. In the Netherlands, we have a fairly productive cooperation between government, private sector, and universities. Sometimes even by making sure that private sector and universities, for instance, are co-located at the same space. If you look at the University of Wageningen, it's one of the major universities in agriculture and food. Unilever, which is a big multinational, has located its research center for food production at the campus at the university. That means that scientists, students, and researchers, they can very easily talk to each other, drink a cup of coffee, exchange experiences. So I think what is needed is to bring all the actors that are relevant together. And I also think in South Africa, the private sector is very, very important in this area. So a lot can be won if government and private sector and academia try to work more together as one team.
Thanks, Ambassador, for that. And I think Premier can also say something about co-ops as they are new thinking in their province.
Yes, we have, well, in South Africa has passed legislation, an enabling legislation to support the cooperative sector as an important sector of our economy, cooperation and cooperating as a very important form of economic activity is not always receiving attention. We have a lot more cooperatives here in the services sector, but cooperatives can do also more in production in various productive sectors. We have cooperatives in Gauteng in the finance sector, where cooperatives are pooling resources. But we include cooperatives in when we talk about the township economy, we include cooperatives there because they are indeed a critical part of most of the cooperators are in the townships. So our township economic development bill, which we will pass in November after the elections, will include critical support for cooperatives.
Thanks for Premier for that. And I think we are now winding down. There is the last question from our virtual attendees, which is going to be flighted, and it's about the smart city of Lanseria that the Premier has referred to. And it's about how much energy does the Lanseria development require. How do you envisage what the role of hydrogen energy will be and how it will be used and where? And I think this is one question that would also be taken up by the other panelists, but I think you can lay the foundation for all those others. Thanks, Premier.
Thank you so much. So the obvious thing is that because of the stage of development of the Lanseria Smart City, I'm not in a position at the moment to tell. Our technical people may be able to tell, to say how much energy would be needed by the smart city, but all I can guarantee you is that the Lanseria Smart City is going to have its own smart grid, and it's going to be renewable energy. So the fundamental principles that go in, it will have a smart grid, it will have renewable energy, and most operations and services of the city will really be based on smart and green technologies. And that's why we make a lot of emphasis on that, including the recycling, on the reuse of water saving in the system. In that at the moment, work is being done to develop more details. We have the regional development plan of the smart city signed off by all municipalities affected. Especially the 4 municipalities in Gauteng, Johannesburg, Tshwane, Mfuleni local municipality, and the 1 municipality in the northwest. The next phase is now is the modeling. One of the important things there is with the smart city development is to the next phase is the modeling of the infrastructure and the bulk, particularly bulk infrastructure financing, which is the work being done by the DBSA. But we will know, and I certainly, in the speech earlier on, when I said that for deployment of hydrogen, we can't wait, because we would like hydrogen to be deployed as an energy source, a new energy source in our smart cities, both Lanseria and the Vaal, even though work is still being finalized on the design of those cities by the city planning teams. But
Yes.
I'm clear in my head, I'm very clear in my head that hydrogen is going, the reason we are an important domestic market already is because we have projects, economic projects, and city development projects of the scale that the deployment of hydrogen would really be a viable thing to do.
Thanks a lot for the answer, Premier. And I believe His Highness Ambassador also wants to add a word.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. Well, inspired by what the Premier just has said, I want to highlight one thing. In the Netherlands, we see that more and more households are becoming their own energy producers, mainly through solar energy. Of course, at sometimes they need energy from the grid. On other times, they have an oversupply. So I think it's also important to make sure that you have regulations in place that make it possible for households to sell back to the grid if they have an oversupply. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And I think that goes to the word of prosumer, producer, and consumer. And as we are winding down, taking our break, I believe there is an opportunity for the audience to further engage with our esteemed guests on Twitter at Hydrogen Indaba, and also on Facebook on Hydrogen Economy Indaba. And gentlemen, it was indeed a pleasure for you to have shared with us the plans and the thinking. And we would hold you to your words that opportunities would be sought for mutual opportunities, and that collaboration is going to be one of the keywords. Maybe, I guess, as we are in Gauteng, even though we are virtual, I would say, Premier, to give us the last word in 30 seconds or 10 seconds.
No, I just want to commend you for the initiative. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you. Okay. Ambassador, when are we expecting euros to flow into South Africa from Netherlands?
As soon as money is to be made, you can be sure that euros will be flowing into South Africa. No, but I think what I said, the Port of Rotterdam is very interested to become a major hub for green hydrogen. For that, we need other countries to produce green hydrogen. And the Port of Rotterdam is more than happy to engage with stakeholders in South Africa to make that happen. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, gentlemen, for your participation. And I believe for the people that are virtual, we're going to take a 10-minute comfort break, and we should join at 10:36 with a stellar line of presenters from Mr. Mlaba, Dr. Thina and Mr. Mashudu Ramano. And on that note, I would expect you all to be back online in 10:36. Thank you very much. Welcome back. And as you have indicated that in this session, we have Mr. Mlaba, and then we'll have Mr. Mashudu Ramano, and then we'll close off with Dr. Thina. Allow me to introduce Mr. Mlaba of NSBE. Mlaba is the current president of the National Society of Black Engineers of South Africa, NSBE SA, and the head of RNC, a business unit in the Transnet SOC Limited, which is responsible for the rehabilitation, maintenance, and construction of the rail network and AMP port infrastructure. Mr. Mlaba has over 24 years uninterrupted experience in engineering profession. He started his career at Eskom, where he worked in various roles as an engineer in training at the Duva Power Station, 97 to 98, plant engineer at Kriel Power Station, 98 to 2000, and senior engineer at PBMR Client Office in Megawatt Park, 2000 to 2002. Mr. Mlaba is no stranger to the private sector. He worked in various roles as area engineer at Engine Refinery 2002 to 2003, engineering manager at ABI 2004 to 2007, engineering manager at Tongaat Hewlett Stutch 2007 to 2009, and engineer manager at BP Southern Africa 2009 to 2011. He joined SOC Limited as chief engineer in October 2011. He holds an MS degree, a BS degree in electromechanical engineering from University of Cape Town, a postgraduate diploma in nuclear science PBMR from the University of Witwatersrand 2001, a postgraduate diploma in management advanced program Wits Business School 2002, a government certificate of competence GCC Factories 2003, and is also a registered practicing professional engineer as of 2001. Mr. Mlaba, we are in your hands and we look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mate, and good morning to Honorable Premier David Makhura, Honorable Ambassador Mr. Han Peters, Dr. Thina, as well as Mr. Ramano, our online guests who are attending this conference. Good morning. So today I'll take you through the NSBE presentation in terms of how we see the hydrogen economy playing a role to uplift the South African economy. So in terms of the introduction, so we'll look at what is hydrogen. So we'll start with the basics so that everyone can have a proper understanding of what hydrogen economy is. We'll then look at the production, storage, and transportation methods of hydrogen. We'll also look at the applications, and then we'll go into the green paper to then discuss what is it that we need to see in the green paper in order to support the clean hydrogen economy in South Africa. So in terms of what the hydrogen is, so hydrogen is the simplest and the lightest element on the periodic table. Each atom of hydrogen contains only one proton, and the sun is essentially a giant ball of hydrogen gas undergoing nuclear fusion into helium gas. This process causes the sun to produce vast amounts of energy. Now, hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. It does not exist on its own and is always found as part of another compound such as water, methane, ammonia, coal, and other organic matter. Therefore, it must be extracted to be used in its purest form, and this explains why it is preferred as an energy carrier and not as a primary energy source. Now, hydrogen has 6 times more energy content by mass compared to other fuel. However, the drawback is that it is a lightest gas and contains less content, energy content by volume. So in order to counteract this, you need to compress hydrogen to high pressure for efficient storage and transportation. If you compare hydrogen to diesel, petrol, and jet fuel, you find that hydrogen has got 3 times more energy content. And that's why the airline industry is seriously looking at using hydrogen to power the aircrafts. Now, if you look at the aviation industry, it accounts for 3% of global CO2 equivalent emissions per annum. And that 3% is equivalent to 2 billion tons of CO2 emissions per year. Now, Airbus is leading the aviation industry in the research work to design a hydrogen fuel cell powered aircraft in order to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions from the aviation industry. Now, lithium ion batteries will not be suitable for long distance flights due to the fact that they are heavy and that you don't want to have a risk of mid-flight power failure. Now, Airbus is targeting to launch the very first hydrogen fuel-powered commercial aircraft by 2035, which is a very ambitious target, but they're putting a lot of money into the research to make it happen, and they're very committed to decarbonizing the world. This means then, in terms of the South African perspective, we need to make sure that AXA is ready to service international airlines with green jet fuel come the time when the hydrogen-powered aircrafts take the sky. Now, in terms of production methods, hydrogen can be produced in different ways. From fossil fuels, you can produce hydrogen as brown hydrogen by gasifying coal. And then you can also produce hydrogen as gray hydrogen by steam methane reforming. Now, if you use both brown and gray methods, there is a technology to capture the CO2. And then when you capture the CO2 and you don't release it to the atmosphere using what is called carbon capture and storage, you then minimize the carbon dioxide emissions to the atmosphere. The issue with this technology is that it's still undergoing testing and demonstration in order to prove that it is efficient. There is a technical paper that was produced in the Science Journal about a month or so ago, which argues that CCS only brings the CO2 equivalent emissions by only 20%, and therefore it questions the investment into CCS. There's also what we called red and pink hydrogen, which is also zero emissions. It's produced using nuclear power. The one that we're interested to pursue as South Africa is what is called green hydrogen. And that green hydrogen is produced by getting energy from renewable energy, wind and solar. And then you use that energy to power the electrolysis, which breaks down the water into oxygen and hydrogen. The oxygen, you can either vent it to the atmosphere, or you can sell it to the medical industry, who then use it for things like the ventilator. We all know during the COVID-19 pandemic how much oxygen was required by the medical industry. And then the oxygen, you can then store it and then use it for various applications, which I'm going to cover at a later stage. Now, there's what we call the proton exchange membrane electrolyzer, which is used when you produce the green hydrogen. And it's abbreviated as PEM. PEM is more suited for us to use with the renewable energy as a primary source of energy to produce green hydrogen, due to the fact that PEM is very agile and it's got the ability to respond quickly to the intermittent renewable energy, because we all know that the sun does not shine all the time and the wind does not blow all the time. So you will need hydrogen to make sure that when that happens, you don't run into load shedding. Now, PEM is manufactured from what is called platinum group metals, PGMs, mainly platinum and iridium. Now, platinum and iridium are ideal materials due to their durability and and conductivity and ability to withstand very harsh oxidic environment, meaning high voltage and acid. And then you've got fuel cells that are manufactured mainly from platinum and ruthenium. Other key PGMs that form part of raw material in the green hydrogen economy value chain include palladium, rhodium, and osmium. Now, the electrolyzer and the fuel cell production cost, they are currently high, but we expect them to fall by 50% come 2030, and a further 60% by 2040, as we scale up the demand for green hydrogen. Electricity production costs from renewable energy are expected to follow the same trend. This will allow green hydrogen to be cost competitive with gray hydrogen at about $1 to $1.50 by 2050. Now, I'm going to talk about how you store and transport hydrogen. Now, the efficient storage and transportation of green hydrogen can be achieved in the following ways. As a compressed gas at pressures higher than 100 bar at ambient temperature, either in road or rail tankers for short to medium distances up to about 300 km. If you need to transport it for longer distance, then you need to invest in a gas pipeline, which I'm pleased to see that the Department of Trade and Industry has announced that South Africa will be investing about 24 billion rand worth of investment to put up a gas pipeline to transport green hydrogen to various end users. Now, that's one way of transporting hydrogen. You can also transport hydrogen as a liquid at ambient temperature and pressure in shipping vessels for overseas customers like Rotterdam, Germany, Japan, and other countries that are pursuing green hydrogen. And then you use hydrogen, you transport hydrogen as a liquid form using what is called LOC, which is a liquid organic hydrogen carrier technology, which is very efficient for transporting hydrogen using maritime. Now, I just want to talk about the applications of hydrogen. Hydrogen can be used in the transportation sector for things like the forklift, in the warehouses, reach stackers at the ports, for heavy duty trucks, for buses and passenger trains. You can also use green hydrogen for tradable products like ammonia, which, in the whole world, there's 175 million tons of ammonia that is required. And the value of that ammonia is $78 billion per annum. So it's quite a big market. Other tradable products include ethanol, aviation fuel, green steel. I'm going to talk more about green steel at the later stage. Maritime shipping fuel, green cement, and fertilizers for the agriculture industry. And that industry of fertilizers is worth $82 billion come 2025. Now, I said earlier I'm going to talk about steel. Now, if you look at steel production is currently ranked number 1 globally in terms of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas emissions, and number 2 in terms of coal-generated energy consumption. So it's quite huge. And these figures, we get them from the Iron and Steel Technology Roadmap. So there is an opportunity here to use green hydrogen to significantly reduce the carbon emissions. In fact, there is a facility already in Sweden that's producing green steel, and it's functioning extremely well. And I think it's setting a very good example to other steel manufacturers. Okay, now I'm going to delve into the green paper, what we expect as an industry with regards to the green paper. And before I go into it, I'd like us to make sure that we have an alignment and the same thinking about what we understand by the green paper. So the green paper is a government policy discussion paper that details specific issues and then points out possible courses of action in terms of policy and legislation. It articulates possible solutions that are yet to be adopted by government. Then green paper is a precursor for a white paper, and the white paper articulates a policy position of government that has to be approved by cabinet. So that's the definition of the green paper. Now coming back to the green hydrogen, green paper. As an industry, this is what we would like to see covered in the green paper. We want the green paper to clearly spell out what the future with green hydrogen would look like by understanding its value chain and how its flexibility allows it to play a role in all sectors of our economy. We envisaged methods of hydrogen production, storage and transportation, and technology innovations that are required to drive down the cost by 80% come 2035. Incentives and capital costs that are required to make green hydrogen economically viable in South Africa to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. We had Premier David Makhura earlier mentioning that South Africa is a signatory of the Paris 2050 agreement, and we need to be compliant and make sure that we're not found delinquent. Now, localization to benefit the broader local Black community and to deal with the legacy of our economic apartheid structure. We need to address that. In order to achieve this goal, catalytic projects, and Premier Makhura did mention that there's a project that the Gauteng government is going to undertake in Lanseria, which is called the Smart City, and they're looking at hydrogen to play a key part. So we're looking for such projects that will kickstart this hydrogen economy. So those projects must benefit all the communities, must be equitable, they must include all the citizens of this country in order to make sure that we transition to clean energy. Now, the next slide, what I've put in here is an extract from the PwC report that gives the South African economic outlook. And this report was compiled earlier this month. And it shows very clearly that South Africa has the highest unemployment rate in the world as we speak. And we then need to find ways in which to come out of the crisis that we're in, because it's not sustainable to be giving the grants that we're currently giving to our people. You just need an incident like we had earlier in the year, where we had a lot of unrest in the country, people were looting. And it was primarily driven by the fact that people are living in poverty. The green paper, if you look at it, it needs to look at three things: economic growth and employment. And on that score, we expect to generate income from green hydrogen up to a tune of about 3 trillion rand per annum come 2050. And that's only capturing 10% of the green hydrogen market. And it will help with the resilience and reliability of the electrical grid. Now, as we scale up the renewable energy, you then find that we're going to scale down on coal-fired power stations, and then we'll retire them and replace them with clean energy. And as I said earlier on, wind and solar, they don't always work. And when they don't work, you then need to have hydrogen to kick in order to avoid load shedding. So that's what we called power grid stability and balancing. Green hydrogen is also going to play a very key role in reduction of our greenhouse gases. As I said earlier, we need to make sure that we comply to agreement with the world in terms of reducing the greenhouse gases. We need to make bold green hydrogen policy decisions in order to champion localization, decentralization, and democratization of the energy production to deal with extreme levels of poverty, income inequality, and unemployment. And this can be achieved by leapfrogging the blue hydrogen method and going straight to green hydrogen. Because in South Africa, we've got a competitive advantage in the sense that we have an abundance of sun and wind, and we have a lot of land to install that infrastructure. Now, if you look at this graph in front of us, you will see that there's a massive interest in hydrogen. People are Googling about it. If you compare to where we were in 2017 and where we are now, there's a significant interest in this technology. The renewable energy take off. You will see that in the middle, the wind power has skyrocketed, as well as the solar energy has skyrocketed. And that's what is driving the need for green hydrogen. The massive scaling up of these renewable energy methods, and that is obviously making the renewable energy more affordable because the costs are plummeting as you scale up. Now, Japan, Germany, South Korea, Hungary, and we heard from the ambassador from Netherlands that there is serious commitment from these countries to be long-term and large-scale customers of green hydrogen. In fact, Japan currently imports 94% of its energy in the form of fossil fuels, and they have put ambitious green hydrogen uptake targets at the core of their energy transition plan. And we need to be vigilant as South Africa in that we are not alone in the race of capturing this market. Australia, United Arab Emirates, Norway, Brunei, Saudi Arabia are aggressively marketing themselves as future suppliers of green hydrogen. So as South Africa, we need to make sure that we have bold government investment commitments, less red tape. We need speed of execution in order to unlock this hydrogen opportunity. We all know that the roadmap was published this last month of September, and this roadmap must not be left on autopilot. So we need to make sure that we're vigilant in driving the implementation of that roadmap. Now, I touched earlier on renewable energy and where we come from bid window 1 in 2011 to bid window 5, which is about to close later this year. Now, if you look at the history of renewable energy back in 2011, we come from looking at the solar. We come from just over 3 rand 50 cents per kilowatt hour, and now in bid window 5, we expect to pay only 50 cents per kilowatt hour for solar, and then the wind. Back in 2011, we were paying 150 per kilowatt hour. We also expect in bid window 5 to pay 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, that's a massive reduction in cost. Solar has come down by 88% from 2011, and wind has come down by 65% since 2011. And the fact that China has flooded the market with cheap solar panels, and that's what has been driving down the cost of solar energy. Now, this slide here talks about what we can possibly do when the coal-fired stations come to retirement. And there's a technology that's currently under demonstration in Europe, where you take the existing coal-fired power station, you chuck out the boiler, which is using coal and generating greenhouse gas emissions. You then replace the boiler with what is called the E2S, thermal energy storage system. And you leave the rest of the installation at the power station the same. And then you use solar to then heat up aluminium and melt it inside the graphite containment. And that latent heat that is used to melt aluminium from a solid state is then used to boil up the water and convert it into superheated steam that you then use in the existing turbines and to generate the electricity. By so doing, you then make sure that the cities in Mpumalanga that are producing electricity are not ghost towns. So if we can do that for Henrina, Komati, and Grootvlei, we can then pump 4 gigawatts of reliable clean energy into the system for hydrogen production.
Thanks, Mdu. I believe we are challenged for time, and we know that you will graciously make your presentation available, which was very insightful and stimulating. And one of the things that you mentioned in your presentation has been about bold policy decisions, and it's a good anchor through which for me to introduce Dr. Thina as our next speaker. Dr. Thina is a senior researcher at the Public Affairs Research Institute, Paris. She holds a PhD in African Studies from University of Edinburgh and an MSc in local government from the University of Birmingham. She has been primarily involved in the field of policy making and local government for 14 years as a researcher and policy practitioner in South Africa, Ethiopia, Botswana, Tanzania, Malawi, and Lesotho, evaluating the implementation of the national local government policy and development programs. She has also contributed in a number of research reports, academic journals, and media publications that broadly focus on local government policy and politics, accountability, and governance practices in various local government institutions and in South Africa. Dr. Nzo, we are in your capable hands. We look forward to your exciting presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Dr. Mate. Let me firstly introduce myself. Again, I'm Dr. Nzo. I'm coming from the Public Affairs Research Institute. And I'd like to take this opportunity to be called in to share some of the research that I've been doing in the Northern Cape regarding the IPP sector, the Independent Power Producer Program. So I will be delivering that presentation. Without wasting any time, let me share my screen so that I can go through the presentation.
Hi, Dr. Nzo. What's happened is you've you've stopped sharing your screen. If you can just share it again, please, and go into full presentation mode, that'd be great.
Thank you. Let me just try and share my screen again.
Sure, I'll wait up here with you while you do that.
Okay, I've chosen the entire screen.
Okay, great. Just share and then.
All right.
And if you can click on your presentation and take it into full presentation mode, please. There you go, and in full presentation mode, and good. Thank you.
Right. I hope this is visible. Without wasting any further time, the title of the research that has been published last month is called Whose Power Is It Anyway? Local Government and the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Program. And I am referring to a case study from Mthanjeni local municipality in the Northern Cape, which is actually hosting wind turbines and the solar energy program. Now, stemming from the previous speaker, in terms of the renewable energy program, it was initiated a couple of years ago, as Mdu said, from 2010 and 2011, when the construction phase began. And now it's close to 10 years later. And I thought, you know what, let's reevaluate this program to actually understand exactly what had transpired during that process when it comes to the construction phase, the economic spin-offs, and also the infrastructure impact that had happened in that municipality. Without even going further into that background, the Premier did talk about the Just Transition Program, because South Africa had committed itself through the Paris Agreement to transition away from the fuel-based energy sources for electricity generation and start getting into the renewable energy sector using technologies. And this also was a way of circumventing what we currently have in this country, which is the energy insecurity and generation capacity crisis with Eskom in South Africa. So this plan was also envisioned in the National Development Plan, where the network of strong economic infrastructure, whereby renewable energy was actually used or seen to be used as one of the ways to circumvent the carbon emissions that we have in this country. And it's also strategically placed in the strategy integrated projects, which were launched a couple of years ago under the previous administration. And then the integrated resource plan policy framework was then developed, which brought in the policy intervention strategy of using the independent power producer procurement program to address these issues that we were finding in South Africa. But one of the important things that I would like to highlight about this is that the uniqueness of the projects is that you must qualify as an independent power producer by actually demonstrating the ways in which you're going to contribute towards the community ownership and economic development benefits to diversify the local economy. So again, as you can see, it's also about the infrastructure. At the same time, taking the renewable energy sector into the green economy, and also remodeling or re-engineering these economies in order to get these economic spin-offs. But then one thing that I did realize about this program is that although it has been implemented over a 10-year period, we are missing the asset policy, but it doesn't really tell us much about what were the policy and planning dynamics that happened between local municipalities, energy economy, the infrastructure, the economic activities that happen at a location. And that location is part of a municipal jurisdiction, of which the municipality obviously will have. For this project really talks about the infrastructure planning and socioeconomic development of host municipalities, particularly these municipalities which are underfunded and these new forms of economic development. So we're highlighting the intergovernmental relations, we're highlighting the spatial planning for RIPP projects. I'm glad that there were questions around spatial planning that were being addressed by the Premier of Gauteng when it comes to spatial planning, and also the municipal infrastructure contribution to the revenue, because one thing that I did realize is that as much as there's a lot of infrastructure investments, and the municipalities also need to plan and cost and look at these financial implications that will have on providing the necessary spatial environment for these projects to unfold. And lastly, understanding this real socioeconomic development value that is derived by the communities. So this research was done through using various methods, interviews, as I'm illustrating in the presentation, and also looking at the various documentation relating to the longitudinal development that had happened in Tanzania as a result of these projects. And taking into account that the Northern Cape is actually identified as the economic hub for renewable energy. We currently have 89% of solars located in the Northern Cape, and 59 RIP projects that are in the Northern Cape. Again, this is now bringing the discourse in terms of engaging with infrastructure, energy poverty, and energy distribution from the center in the urban areas, for example, like provinces of Gauteng, and actually providing these linkages, economic linkages to the periphery, to see how we reproduce sometimes the socio-economic inequalities when we roll out these projects. Going straight into the findings, first of all, like I said, I looked at the intergovernmental relations. We know that when it comes to the renewable energy, it is planned at the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Council, which constitutes the many different departmental officials and political heads in the various provinces and sector departments. And the key player there was the DMRE and the National Treasury. But unfortunately, what we have found is that although SALGA participates in the IPCC when it comes to the infrastructure coordination and COCTA, there was really no proper planning and dialogue consultation initiated between SALGA and COCTA in terms of moving with these two departments that are representative departments of local government and are in charge of actually coordinating these activities between national and local government. It was mainly positioned as a national policy decision, again, not really addressing the issues of energy poverty and infrastructure in rural host municipalities, because if there were these dialogues that could have happened, at least the structure, that the PICC structure would have been able to take into consideration the issues that SALGA could have been placing on the table, considering the municipality. We've got dysfunctional IGR systems in the country, especially when it comes to the decentralized systems of the district municipalities and local municipalities, and obviously over-relying on the district municipalities to execute the planning of these projects. Now, again, coming back to spatial planning, absence of town planning units. In small rural municipalities, they don't have the capacity in terms of expanding and establishing town planning units, nor can they afford to get the necessary professionals in the town planning sector. So here you find that, unfortunately, due to the absence of town planning and also not having a functional SPLUMA, which is the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Committee, and not updating their spatial development framework, they did not apply the necessary spatial planning legislation that they were supposed to use in order to do what we call rezoning of agricultural land for solar parks and wind farms, in order to determine the bulk service contributions that were supposed to be made by the IPP sector, including the landowners as well, where the IPPs were leasing the land from. So again, no planning unit and capacity really interfered in this process, and as a result, the municipalities were not able to collect enough taxes and rates, and also the levies that were needed to contribute towards their repair and maintenance infrastructure, because there were a whole lot of construction activities happening that really put a strain on the municipal infrastructure, such as water, sewage services, etc. Land acquisition. State versus private land ownership. Now, we need to remember that IPPs need vast land in order to set up their infrastructure. And I'm glad that somebody brought up the issue around the land issue in South Africa, where they were asking a question around whether the hydrogen infrastructure would require land, and how much land, because remember, we are competing with limited availability of land, where the state doesn't have a lot of land, and most land is in the owners of your private owners. And in the Northern Cape, unlike your urban centers such as South Africa, where you find that private owners of land are in your commercial activities and your private accommodation centers. In the Northern Cape, you find that more than 77% of the land is owned by a white minority and the other farmers, and only 1% of this land is actually owned by coloureds, and only Indians are only owning 5% of this land. So you can see that the land distribution is very skewed in South Africa, and that's why you find that when it came to the real beneficiation in terms of the IPP infrastructure and leasing of land in order to get revenue and profits out of it, the minority landowners are the ones who have benefited lucratively. Again, there is a policy discrepancy here, where the IPP sector is not incentivized to actually acquire land from the state first before going to private landowners. And here the municipality, at the end of the day, is the one that loses out in terms of getting lucrative revenue generation to sustain themselves. Now, talking about skills, I'm glad that at a later stage, the Department of Education will be roped in to talk about issues of education levels and skills. If we need to move towards the hydrogen economy, like what happened with the IPPs, we need to start thinking about the necessary skills that the country needs to have. Yes, there was beneficiation in terms of decreasing unemployment from 58 to 37% in Tanzania specifically, and also their local economy grew from 1% to 6% during the booming of the construction. But again, what I found out of the results is that, there was a disconnection between the local economic development and the prosperity of creating jobs with the social education and skills and infrastructure related issues that needed to be synchronized in the planning with other stakeholders, particularly your national and provincial department, your sector departments such as human settlement, public works, Department of Labor, etc. So those departments need to come into the table and start having these discussions in terms of planning for the hydrogen economy, rather than throwing the economy into a very precarious space where, for example, only 27% of the population in Mtanzania had matric, only 9% of the population had post-matric. And as a result, there was a high shortage of skills acquisition from the local community in terms of your professional, your technical, your artisan and engineering skills that was required. And there you will find that at a later stage, these IPPs started to actually get your professional skills coming outside from the municipality and the locality spaces in terms of your different towns in your province and also outside of the province. Your highly skilled engineers predominantly came from Johannesburg and Cape Town, and your project managers from these companies came from UK, China, and Italy, because the IPP consortiums were coming from these different countries. Population growth, we keep on forgetting to always include the population projection in terms of our planning. It grew from 34,000 to 45,000. High demand of goods and services and amenities started to escalate. There was speculation around the accommodation sector, where people were starting to even take loans to acquire new property so that they could provide the high levels of demand. And also the eruption of informal settlements, because if you're getting general workers coming from outside, it means that they can't afford the highly expensive accommodation. So there was a lot of eruption of informal settlements that did not exist pre the project coming into Mtanzania. Historically disadvantaged Black and colored communities who did not have access to capital or even assets to provide or expand services were the ones who actually were the biggest losers during that time. Again, the unions. This sector is not unionized. There's no bargaining council. There's a lot of usage of labor brokers during that time. And there was no proper consultation with also your labor forums. As a result, there was a lot of labor exploitation. Some companies even paid 50 Rand per day for workers, and others paid 100 to 150 a day as a minimum daily rate. Now here, the Department of Labor was not able to address these issues because they were also not ready. They didn't understand exactly what entails the skills and labor acquisition that is needed for the sector in order to set the primary conditions of labor and practices. Subcontracted service providers were mainly from outside the municipality and the province. The equipment was coming from outside the country because Germany, Italy,
He's just a normal. Hi, Dr. Thina.
Practices of
You're
subcontracting.
You're dropping in your signal. If you can just turn your camera off, please, and just keep your audio going,
right.
I think we'll be better. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Let me just hide. You know what? Let me
You're
just
fine now.
proceed
Just
because
continue.
I'm
Yeah,
not
just continue. You're fine.
able
Yeah,
to navigate to the camera just for the sake of time, but I'm about to end. With result to the municipalities, there's always an assumption that revenue will be happening during the period. It wasn't much direct, significant revenue generation. In fact, because these projects are very short term, they are 2 years, you find that the municipality post the construction period, there was now a budget deficit and a loss of revenue and an increased unemployment and also an increased expenditure as well. So then they had to really start thinking about issues that are related to unemployment. That was a result of that, of the construction period. Another issue that came up, it's the NERSA and ESCOM and municipalities, where NERSA is actually the regulation, passes regulations, tariff regulations for municipalities, while on the other hand, ESCOM tariffs for bulk purchasing of electricity had increased. So people couldn't afford to pay for the electricity, and now the municipality started to experience electricity losses. And then now coming towards the end, the IPP economic contributions. IPPs are supposed to contribute back to these communities by setting up trusts and social economic development plans. But you find that there are certain regulations around the way in which these community trusts can actually spend or should I say reinvest into these communities once they start generating the revenue from selling their energy to ESCOM. And this takes time. It takes about 6 years before these dividends can start to accrue and be redistributed to these communities. So unfortunately, communities began to lament against not seeing the valuable, tangible benefits that are coming out from the IPPs, as well take into account that they could not afford electricity anymore due to high unemployment and increased tariff rates. They even started questioning the fact that there were IPPs that are sitting in their backyard in the municipality, and yes, they could not even be able to draw renewable energy from these IPPs because of the limitations of the regulations in the energy distribution in the country. So again, poor alignment of IPP SCD plans with municipal IDPs. It's good that at least there is now the district development model that is being implemented by the Department of Cooperative Governance. But IPPs did not participate in IDPs of municipalities. As a result, you find that the municipality was not able to address some of their developmental plans using the SED plans of the IPPs. And what's even interesting, to reinvest in the infrastructure of the municipality, DMRE regulates the infrastructure investment into the municipality. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, transition into the renewable energy sector, if the basics is that there is a continuum of path dependency in the transition into the renewable energy when it comes to the political economy stages of agenda setting up to your capital investments and implementation stages. So it lands on a local government spatial mapping of municipalities that really feature these very deep socioeconomic inequalities. And the Premier did speak about unequal access to safe and clean energy. So inequalities, they exist. Access to energy and energy poverty still exist. Racialized distribution of wealth and income and structured in exclusionary economic participation in the green economy, it exists. We need to address land reform and administration. We need to address the capacity for planning of municipalities. We need to address the capacity of SMMEs and their lack of access to capital and asset ownership, neglect of economic transformation, local procurement, decentralization of renewable energy, and also the reduction of the equitable share and declining revenue collection, all inclusive within the intergovernmental relations framework and interface. So host municipalities, in other words, and their communities are vulnerable to their limitations and powerless positions to negotiate with the private sector. These are the recommendations that I have cited as well. And also in the paper, I do talk about an SMME partnership that had gone wrong between Globalec, which is a state-owned investment company that is based in the UK with 30% shareholding coming from Norway. And they had come into a partnership with a local SMME. Again, that relationship ended up in litigation because some of the fundamental issues around the scoping of work, professionalization, enterprise development, the issue of not being able to have a long-term contract because their contract was terminated within 2 years because the company Globalec wanted to cut down costs in terms of labor in the maintenance and operation phase. It brought in huge problems, and even not being able to pay for their debts, they were left with a huge problem at the end. So there are certain issues that need to be addressed by the hydrogen community, especially when it comes to the opportunities that are being presented for your economically excluded races in South Africa, to ensure that they benefit out of this sector. And let me end there. Thank you very much.
Dr. Nzo, thanks a lot for, I would call it a gut-wrenching presentation. And I believe one can take from your presentation the importance of planning and also the importance of skills and also alignment. So we thank you as I introduce Mr. Mashudu Ramano of AIA. Mashudu Ramano is a consummate entrepreneur who has been involved in the development of hydrogen economy in South Africa since 2007. He's an entrepreneur in transition to a sustainable future, a founder of and an investor in several companies, and has extensive experience in listed and unlisted companies, as well as private and public entities in South Africa. He's a former chairman of Airport Company South Africa, Astron Energy South Africa, Joining Communication, African Legend Investment, African Harvest, among others, and director of Transnet, Joining Industrial Holdings, Chevron South Africa, Coronation Holdings, Avon, and Dedisa Picking Power. Mashudu founded Mitochondria Energy Company in 2012, Mitochondria Energy Systems in 2015, Singamati, We Are Water Holdings in 2018, and the Hydrogen Valley Innovation Hub in 2021. In the 1980s and 1990s, Mashudu served as a leader in the National Federated Chamber of Commerce and Industry, NAFCOC Gauteng, and the Secretary General of NAFCOC National, the Executive Director of Association of Advancement of Black Accountants, ABASA, and was a South African representative of the global accountancy body, the Association of Certified Chartered Accountants, ACA, between 1991 and 2000. Among other activities, Mashudu is involved in being co-founder of the Black Industrialist Association. Among several recognition awards, Mashudu has been recognized by the Black Management Forum as a champion of Black economic empowerment in 1999, the Association of Black Securities and Investment Professionals, APSIP, as a pioneer of Black economic empowerment 2001, the BMF as the Business Personality of the Year in 2018, the BPI Foundation for the BPI Iconic Business and Leadership Excellence Awards in 2019 in South Africa. Mashudu has presented papers at several conferences, including the Commonwealth Business Council, among others. We are in your capable hands, Mr. Mashudu, hoping to hear good news after what Dr. Nzo has shared. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mate and Premier Makhura, Ambassador Peters. Welcome, and it's a pleasure to be here. My colleague, Mlaba, and Dr. Nzo, and all the guests that are with us here today. I wish to categorically state that the hydrogen economy is one of the biggest and the most significant opportunities for South Africa. Never in the history of post-apartheid South Africa has there been such a platform presented to our country to transform the socio-economic structures of our society for the better. Through the hydrogen economy, the country has the opportunity to address several challenges it is facing, all at the same time. The challenge of energy security, of economic development, of economic transformation, and climate change. And you will be delighted to know that South Africa has the goodwill of the global community who are encouraging us to transform our economy to hydrogen. The question is, will we as South Africans rise to the occasion? This is, in my view, our moment. This is our time. This is the time, a time to rally around each other for our common good and the good of all life on planet Earth. We need to take advantage and transform this opportunity into tangible benefits, jobs, skills, and entrepreneurial opportunities for the bulk of our country's citizens, and not just for the few that have already made it. This is our time to create an inclusive society in which every one of us can proudly feel that they belong and are happy to make a contribution. You may be wondering why I can be so bold to make such a statement that this is the biggest opportunity in post-apartheid South Africa. This is because the hydrogen economy means a minimum of 3 trillion rand per annum by 2050 injected into our economy. 3 trillion rand is more than half the current GDP of our country. This is not small. It is big. This will be done through investments in energy generation for green production, for green hydrogen production, for both local and international export markets. It will be in the storage, logistics, and transportation of hydrogen and related products that you've heard from Mlaba, in the manufacturing of products needed for hydrogen production and use and in the side stream and downstream and user markets that I'm going to talk very briefly about later. But first, let me share briefly why some countries succeed in their economies and why others do not. This was a question that seized my mind for 40 years. I have been trying to understand why countries like the ones that we belong to here in Africa are less developed, and other countries in the West and the East are more developed. I got the answer in 2007 when I was invited to speak at the Korea Plant Industries Conference. In preparing for my presentation, I was shocked to understand and discover that in 1973, South Korea was poorer than sub-Saharan Africa. But by 2007, South Korea was the 14th largest economy in the world, and sub-Saharan Africa had deindustrialized. Now, to put it in context, South Korea is 1/10 the size of South Africa. It is actually the size of the Free State in land area. But in 2007, it had the 14th largest economy in the world. And since then, that is, since 2007, South Korea's economy has grown to be in the top 10, in the top 11 economies in the world. During this period, some of our countries, including our own country's economy, have not grown. How did South Korea do it? This is an issue that we need to consider seriously as we look into how we change the fortunes of our country. The answer I found was very interesting. As you can see in the slide, it was different from all the theories you have heard about development and underdevelopment. It was like a big veil of darkness being removed from my eyes. What South Korea did, among other things, was to follow the advice of an African who lived in Tunis in the 12th century by the name of Ibn Khaldun, who is now rightly regarded as the father of economics, and not Adam Smith, as most of us have been led to believe. Yes, you heard me correctly. The real father of economics is an African born and bred in Africa who cut his teeth in the deserts of North Africa. Ibn Khaldun advised rulers to develop the productive capacity of their people and consequently their nations. This same philosophy has been followed by all successful countries, including the latest being China. But here in Africa, we do not teach our youth to have productive skills and capacities. Instead, we teach them to work for a future in heaven where they will be sipping angels' dews, while other countries are teaching their youth to manipulate and work with the chemical elements of nature to produce the goods and services their countries and the rest of the world requires. Africa and South Africa, please wake up. This is your time. Call this Economics 101. As you can see on the slide, all successful economies start with working with Mother Nature and the fundamental chemical elements of nature, what is regarded, what is termed the periodic table. I believe that if we want our country to succeed economically, every child in our society, from kindergarten to tertiary, must be taught to memorize and know all the elements of the periodic table. Nature is now giving us, as South Africans, an opportunity to learn to work with hydrogen, the first element of the periodic table. Hydrogen is so small, we cannot see it with our own eyes, but it has huge economic implications for us and the rest of the world. For over 300 years now, we have used what is called the hydrocarbons. A group of decomposed organic matter made entirely of carbon and hydrogen to fulfill our energy needs. These materials are known by the names of wood, coal, crude oil, and methane. However, over the last 200 years, this hydrocarbon energy sector has been silently changing and transforming, as you can see on the slide there. It has been changing from coal to oil to gas to hydrogen. And as it changes from coal to liquid, from solid to liquid to gas, the hydrogen content increases, and the carbon content decreases. And you can see on the right-hand side that over the past 30 years, there has been increasing demand for hydrogen in various sectors of the economy. At the same time as this energy sector was transforming, we discovered that the more we burn hydrocarbons, we disturb the chemistry of the atmosphere and increase the heat content that is trapped in the atmosphere, resulting in increased average earthly temperatures. So we are now at a point in human history where the amount of carbon in the atmosphere is causing significant weather changes. This has made many observers to conclude that the Earth is reaching a tipping point, some sort of planetary emergency. And as you can see on the slide there, I'm pointing out, we are in some kind of climate dead-on where humanity has to choose whether it's going to continue with fossil fuels or we are going to change to better and cleaner energy solutions. The severe weather changes are forcing us to seriously consider moving with speed to complete the natural transition that I have just referred to hydrogen as the energy carrier and the vector of our global society. You can see there at the top of this slide the dirty energy fossil fuel. And at the bottom, you can see the new, cleaner energy technologies that we need to be moving to. You can see there that the geography of the global fossil energy resources distribution will change from a high concentration in the Middle East to a new geography of hydrogen with Africa at its center. And you can see here in the next slide that we will be moving from dirty fossil fuel energy to a hydrogen and circular energy system where you have a regenerative energy technology, which I will briefly describe just now. South Africa has, on the other hand, been highlighted, as you can see in this green, as an area in the world with high potential for green hydrogen production and manufacturing. My company, called Mitochondria Energy Company, decided, and supported by the DBSA, the IDC, and the Department of Trade and Industry, that we must do something about creating a hydrogen economy in South Africa. So together with the Gauteng government and the newly established VAL SEZ, we are building a 2 billion fuel cell manufacturing factory in the VAL area. This will be the first manufacturing facility of its size in South Africa and possibly in the world. So we are working with the VAL SEZ, the Gauteng government, to make the VAL area a hydrogen innovation hub and a manufacturing center for excellence of hydrogen.
Mashudu, may I kindly ask that 30 seconds we summarize so that we have the opportunity to engage as a panel, say?
I am moving towards closing as I speak. So, in full capacity, the fuel cell manufacturing facility in the VAL will employ 500 people. And this is the type of fuel cell that we will be manufacturing at our facility. It will have an output of 250 kilowatts. It will have a total efficiency of more than 90% when in operation. Mm-hmm. So it is our considered view that the hydrogen economy is huge and that as many of our people as possible must prepare to participate in it. This is a new industry, and the meaningful partnerships based on contribution, skill, and capacity should be established to develop it. I believe that the BEE model is not appropriate for our country anymore. What we need are genuine partnerships designed to improve the productive capacity of our people. To play in this hydrogen economy, South Africa must be bold and make decisive decisions to create an enabling environment for the hydrogen economy to flourish. I have identified 9 critical issues that our country must address, as reflected on the screen, for us to be able to move towards this global emerging hydrogen economy. I thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mashudu, for a well-presented presentation. Now, for all the audience that are online, we are going to invite back our speakers to have a question and answer session that due to time constraints, we would have to have it completed by 12:10 so that a representative from the sponsors, Mr. Musiwe Matema, can be able to give us a wrap. So I guess as we are going to be looking at the questions from the comments, I'm going to allow Mr. Mlaba 45 seconds to complete his conclusion from the NSBE presentation that got interrupted earlier on. We will hold you to your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I think from our side, the concluding remarks is that South Africa is 5 years behind on the decarbonization journey and needs to set up very aggressive and ambitious climate change targets to catch up with Europe, USA, Japan, and other developed nations on the clean energy transition. These targets must be clear and measurable to incentivize transition to clean energy, to drive the demand and production of green hydrogen. Designing financial support instruments such as capital expenditure subsidies and tax rebates is very important to offset the initial cost of these new technologies. And we believe that Cabinet must clearly identify the government department, be it DSI, DTIC, or DMRE, or NESA, that will be one department responsible to lead this green hydrogen economy from now until the large-scale rollout is finished. Now, we know that the hydrogen panel was assembled by Minister Patel, and it must identify and communicate the critical steps that South Africa needs to take immediately to take full advantage of this 11 billion trillion global green energy boom that is coming our way. And we need to make sure that several industries must be identified where green hydrogen can make immediate and substantial inroads into climate goals. These include large-scale operations such as petrochemical, steel manufacture, medium to heavy-duty vehicles such as buses, trucks, passenger trains, and ships.
Well, now, Mr. Ndu, I believe that's where we would end because you will have also the second opportunity to answer to the questions as they'll be asked. And fortunately, Dr. Thina, you are the lucky one to have the first question directed to you. And it's a very well-informed and timely question that says, what would be your summary for the future of Northern Cape in the hydrogen space, specifically along the coast? Your take.
Thank you very much, Dr. Makhura, for that question. The Northern Cape, I should say the Northern Cape is actually one of the most advantageous geographically positioned provinces in the country. And when I say advantageous, in the sense that although it's considered to be in the margins of the state, but at the same time, it's got ample natural resources. And we know this coming from the mining sector, you know, your Kumba iron ore that is actually producing resources for making steel that is also needed to produce wind turbines that are coming back into the country. And you also have opportunities as well, because there has been a study that has been done to look at other sources of energy, and hydrogen energy is actually one of those sources of energy that can be produced in the Northern Cape. And also the advantage of the Northern Cape is that it also has a coastal belt along Port Nolloth, along Alexandra Bay, which means that even in the future, because there were talks about even expanding the Atlantic coastal port for the Northern Cape in order to export some of these renewable energy resources rather than relying on the transportation of your ports that are located in KZN, particularly Richards Bay. So yes, there is huge potential to step into this field and position the Northern Cape as, again, the economic hub for renewable energy. But my caution is that South Africa currently, under the modus operandi and the socio-economic landscape, is that we are fragile and we are vulnerable in terms of repeating, these path dependencies on the political economy of positioning Northern Cape as just an extractive industry for natural resources. Like I said, mining of Kumba iron ore is done in Batu, but it's shipped out of the country, brought back into the country as renewable energy wind turbines. Now, this really positions us as a country that is just mainly viewed as an extractive center. So that's why I'm glad that this Indaba positions South Africa into the playing field of being an economic hub for manufacturing. Gauteng has the muscle to do that, but they need to talk together with the Northern Cape in order to find these leverages in terms of bringing these sectors and ensuring that we don't have capital outflows. So that is my position, and I hope that in terms of planning, we will take that into consideration very carefully. Plan for hydrogen. Let us not just rush for FDIs, foreign direct investments, without making sure that we get the basics right. We negotiate our way into the global economy by becoming much bigger players in the manufacturing industry.
Dr. Zo, thanks for such an elaborate answer. I guess maybe the speakers could be aware or maybe not, but the three of you had at one instance or the other used the word bold when you made reference to your input and contribution. And we also noted from Dr. Nzo's presentation that there is a shortage of skills. So I'm going to allow each about 30 seconds or so to say, with regards to boldness and skills in this space, because remember, it is the first episode, it is going to set the tone for others. And our sponsor will be summarizing what we have talked about. So let us endeavor to say, what do we see as the next steps? I would start with Mr. Mlaba, and then Mr. Ramano, then Dr. Nzo. And then after that, we'll take a next question. Let us try to keep to time.
Thanks, Dr. Mate. As we all know, the roadmap was approved by Cabinet last month and is pending public release by the Department of Science and Innovation in order to kickstart this hydrogen economy. This needs to happen very urgently and close out to mobilize all stakeholders behind this one vision to avoid missing this window of opportunity that South Africa has within the next 4 to 5 years. If we miss this window of opportunity, then it will put us at a disadvantage. Now, we look forward to joining the Department of Science and Innovation in their public engagement campaign to officially launch this roadmap and help other fellow South Africans to learn more about this green hydrogen economy. We hope that this will be done by fostering a transparent discussion about the challenges in front of us and how we can work together in order to overcome these challenges. Thanks, Dr. Mate.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ramano?
Thank you, Dr. Mate. I think for me, the biggest challenge and the boldness that I think we need is to understand that you don't build economies by trade. You build economies by building the productive capacity of your people. And I think this is where we are having a big challenge in South Africa. We have a challenge that our young people, our youth, are not taught to work with the elements of nature. They are taught to go and work for somebody else. They are taught to go and look for employment. If they don't find a retail opportunity, they starve. If they don't find a grant from government, they starve. That's what we need to change. We need to do it boldly, and our government must stop apologizing and take bold decisions to create productive capacity in the country.
Well said, Dr. Nzo.
In 30 seconds, I would actually pick up the cue from Mr. Ramano to say that indeed reskilling is important in this country. We cannot just step into an industry, a new industry, without being prepared, plan for it, and also take the different various sectors, such as the education sector, along to ensure that they produce the skills from the students that we have in our system in order to be able to actually play in the renewable energy economy. So yes, reskilling, we need those engineers, we need those professionals to come in and participate. And again, just to even emphasize, we need to be bold indeed, because Namibia, just across the border, has already taken up the hydrogen economy. So we are lagging behind. Let me end there.
Thanks, panel. I think the questions under the comments can be flighted both at the same time because they are complementary. It's regarding policy and also the question of the roadmap. In one of the panels where one happened to participate, one of the participants said, it is no longer necessary to be coming with policies and all. We need action. So I'm going to ask that we look at the two questions and briefly pronounce on them with regards to what our thinking is on them.
We don't see the questions.
Well, Jackie has to, there you go, that's the first one. Do we really need another policy document? Can we not leverage on the existing ones? And then we can quickly go on to the next one. The next question, please. So what is the purpose of the hydrogen panel set up by the DTI minister in view of the advances already made as reflected by the presentation by Mr. Ramano? I guess any volunteer can pick one and the others can maybe talk on the other, as we have 6 minutes remaining.
Okay, I will start. I'll start with, do we need another policy? I think it is important to emphasize that South Africa is a constitutional state. And you just don't do things helter-skelter, willy-nilly. You need a policy framework within which to operate. There is currently no definitive policy on the hydrogen economy in South Africa. And as Mr. Mlaba has already indicated, South Africa is way behind. Even though HISA was started in 2007, 2008, the policy document on hydrogen society has only been approved 2 weeks ago. We are already almost 10 years behind other countries in an economic opportunity that we have significant advantages. So I think that is critical, that we have policy certainty, we have policy guidelines that says to us in the private sector, those that want to invest in this space, these are the rules of the game. So yes, we need a proper, certain hydrogen policy for the country.
Thank you, sir. The next one can take the baton.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mashudu. Can I cover the hydrogen panel that was established by Minister Patel in July 2021?
Yes, sir.
So that panel has got the following deliverables. The hydrogen infrastructure master plan must be delivered by them, and that plan must address, amongst others, how the hydrogen economy will be produced, the hydrogen itself will be produced, transported, and stored efficiently from the production location to the end users, especially given the fact that South Africa does not have a gas pipeline network like in Europe, Asia, and the USA. You would have heard earlier on when I said DTI has announced that 24 billion rand will be invested in putting up the gas pipeline. And also another deliverable for this panel is to make sure that there's a commercial and funding strategy in place for green hydrogen. They need to make sure that there's a localization strategy in place. And they also need to propose catalytic projects to kickstart this hydrogen economy towards the large-scale industrialization. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Mdu. Dr. Nzo, your comment on any of the two questions?
Thank you, Dr. Mate. I couldn't agree more with both with Mr. Mlaba and Mr. Ramano, in the sense that as much as there is a question around South Africa always being very good at formulating policies and not being able to implement policies, and if whether we have not reached a stage of a ceiling in terms of developing policies, like Dr. Ramano had said, it's important to always get a framework that will guide the development of a country. And that framework must be constituted or informed by the current status quo and the need to resolve societal problems. Policies are about resolving societal problems and finding ways in which these societal problems are going to benefit communities. So yes, indeed, we have to be guided by a policy document that specifically looks at the hydrogen sector, especially the sector. That must be informed by the integrated resource plan, of which, as we have seen with the IPPs, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to address all the various segments that we are learning from the research that we are getting from the ground in the local municipalities, in order to ensure that we get the best outcomes and South Africa also benefits directly in the global economy.
Thanks to the wonderful panel. I think I'm going to sum up by saying we have noted from the presentation that like the water leaks that we have that can be controlled and then we preserve water, there are leakages in our policies and there are gaps that hamstrung the implementation thereof. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon the next episodes to take the baton forward and see how we ensure that at the end of this journey of the Hydrogen Indaba, we are able to come up with a proclamation that says we would have the wherewithal of how to build a nation, how to know the value of economies that are built on trading. And I believe it's a good point at which that I thank you and introduce from our sponsors, Mr. Musiwetu Mateta, who is the Group Executive Micro Business Intelligence for the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, and also with the VAL SEZ. I would thank the organizers for the opportunity to have been given the responsibility to lead today the kickoff, and wish the program success going forward, and give over to Mr. Matema, who is going to do the concluding reflections for us with regards to what we have done today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Program Director, and good afternoon to the panelists as well as the guests that are present with us. I think my task is a simple one. It's really to summarize today's discussions of the Hydrogen Indaba episode 1. And in reflecting, I think I will lean on what the theme for today's discussions were. And the theme was defining the opportunity for hydrogen. And in today's discussions, we've heard, firstly, from the Premier of Gauteng, Honorable David Makhura, who was able to give our guests as well as our panelists the political and strategic direction that we as a provincial government have taken towards green hydrogen. But also in various discussions, we heard about the importance of having a strong policy foundation, the importance of skills development, but most importantly for us at the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, who drive industrialization and implementation of the province's industrial ambitions, is the depth of creating a much more nuanced value chain that has economic inclusion and industrial inclusivity at its heart. The purpose of this green hydrogen agenda from our side as provincial government is obviously to set up a green hydrogen strong point in a previously deindustrialized steel region. So part of the discussions around the value chain also do include nuances of how do we make sure that the production of steel, particularly in the southern corridor of the Gauteng city region, happens in a manner that is able to give rebirth to industrialized green steel. But Dr. Tins also touched in discussions on the role of other countries. And from a GGDA perspective, we view that approach as the fact that inclusive industrialization on the continent should happen with a partnership basis. There is other regions in the SADC area, in the rest of Africa, that have advantages that we might particularly not have as the Gauteng city region. So we can lean on our industrial capabilities to make sure that we create a value chain and an ecosystem that is wholly conclusive. So in terms of the theme for today, defining the opportunity, I think the participants as well as the political will has really clearly demonstrated that there is an opportunity for us to create a new industry that is energy intensive, but green energy intensive. And that industry will also drive industrialization in other forms. What is particularly exciting about hydrogen is that hydrogen also plays a particular role in closing the energy deficit that exists in the Gauteng city region, in South Africa, and in the continent. It also produces an export potential for exporting green hydrogen to other industrialized areas in the world. And that industrialization and export of that good will be economically beneficial for us in Gauteng, for South Africa, as well as the rest of the region. I'm quite particular in touching the fact that of the rest of the region and the continent, because we have to be cognizant that post 1st of January, we now operate in a free trade agreement. And as such, the spirit of all industrialization initiatives that we embark on as a country and as a city region should bear in mind that we now have a wider array and a wider spectrum of opportunities to basically drive intra-Africa commerce. And as such, the green hydrogen agenda of the province and of the country will lean heavily on the ambitions of driving intra-Africa commerce over and above the ambitions of driving industrialization. I think, Mr. Mate, I'll leave it at there and thank the participants for meaningful engagement and giving additional insights and guidance to the implementation of this exciting chapter in our industrialization as a province. Thank you, Program Director, and thank you to all the participants as well as the discussants and the viewers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, and thanks to all the participants and for all the viewers online. I believe one announcement that is necessary to make is that the presentations will be shared with participants, and I think we have been informed that social media platforms can be used to promote the episode of today and upcoming. So I bid you all farewell, and we will close with a promotion of the next episode. Thank you and goodbye.